Hello and welcome to the President's Diary, your monthly television program that highlights the activities of the President in the past month. In this episode, we will bring you highlights of the visit of the President to the state of Qatar. The President went to the Gulf state and he entered into a series of bilateral agreements with the leadership of that country. We will bring you an in-depth analysis of this visit. We will also look at the State of the Nation address, which was delivered at the National Assembly complex in Banjul by the President, where he discussed a wide-ranging issues from governance to policy matters, development infrastructure, and also the call for national reconciliation, unity, and harmony. We also have a very intimate interview with the President, reflecting on his relationship with the former President, Sir Dawda Kairaba. The President discussed in great detail how Sir Dawda Jawara inspired him in the way that he governs this country. We also look at a talk that we had with the Director of Press and Public Relations, Ms. Ami Bojan Sisoho, where we discuss in depth the President's State of the Nation address. These and many more coming up in this interesting episode of the President's Diary. My name is Mfali Fadera and my co-presenter is Zainab Fall.
Thank you very much, viewers, for joining us for yet another exciting episode of the President's Diary. Like we always say, this is a program that is spearheaded by the Media and Communication Unit of the Office of the President. All right, viewers, to start this episode of the program, we are going to discuss the State of the Nation address. This was an address that almost everyone is talking about because the President has reinforced his call for national unity, and he has talked about his policy goals and developments geared towards delivering a government that every Gambian deserves. And I was there, and of course, Fali Fadera, you were at the National Assembly when the President delivered such a powerful statement to mark the opening of the legislative year of 2019. What stood out for you in the address?
Thank you very much, Zainab. As you rightly pointed out, I was there in the National Assembly chambers listening to the President passionately lay out his development aspiration, his vision for the country in the year ahead, but also discussing development activities of his government in the last year. The President, as you rightly pointed out, touched on almost everything, almost all the relevant sectors of our development, from finance to agriculture to national reconciliation to the ongoing reform programs, among a host of other initiatives. To give perspective to the speech of the President at the National Assembly, I had an extensive discussion with the Director of Press and Public Relations, Ms. Ami Bojan Sisoho, at the State House to take a look at the President's speech in detail. It's always good to have you on the program. The first question, Madam DPPR, what does the State of the Nation address of the President mean for the vision and the direction of this country going ahead in the next year?
From my analysis of it, I think it is very visionary because it has stated, in fact, in almost all the ministries that they should have a direction. And to have a direction, we must have a policy. And the speech has indicated either the ministries have already developed their policies or they are in a process of developing the policies and finally or reviewing existing policies in situations where they already had old ones and they have to bring them up to speed with the current situation. I think from that angle, it is very visionary. It is very focused in terms of what we need as a country. Also, in the address, he has indicated in the different ministries what they are doing in terms of government programs. And to have government programs, you must have a clear policy direction. To have a clear policy direction that will guide the people who are supposed to engage in those policy, program development and implementation. I think in that sense, the address brought out a clear position of where the country is and where we are heading to. Because he has indicated that with the laws and the proposals for the proposed bills, they will be tabled to the National Assembly by the end of the year. That means that by the end of 2019, most of the ministries should have their policies in place. They should have the laws to guide their institutions in place, and that is very important in program implementation and development. From that angle, it is important to me. And from the perspective of, apart from having those individual programs and policies, also in terms of development, you will realize that in some of the ministries, they've indicated some of the activities, I would say, they are engaging. Even though the overall intention of the address is not to go into nitty-gritties of programs and projects and activities, but is to give the overall guide as to where his government is directing things and towards what. That's the main overall objective of the address, to tell the National Assembly, and by extension Gambians, what direction do we want? This is our direction. And I think in each of the ministries, they have indicated either they have developed and completed the review of existing policies, or they are in a process of finalizing proposed bills and policies that will go to the National Assembly. And I think for any organizational situation, that is very key for you to have a way forward in your way of operation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Siso. As you rightly pointed out, the President discussed extensively the policies of the government, some of which border on fighting corruption, as you rightly pointed out, the reforms and things like that. But we also had the President discuss some remarkable achievements registered in the area of the economy, in the area of education, which I think a good example is transforming GDDI into a university, and a host of issues in terms of education, agriculture, and things like that. But so my question is, what are some of the major outstanding achievements that the President highlighted that stood out for you from the State of the Nation address?
If we look at the address from the perspective of, apart from the ministries having their policies and programs outlined, if you take the example you have taken, in the area of, let's start with the education. It has clearly stated that its government wants to focus on science, technology, and engineering and mathematics, the STEM, the research. That means that the government has a clear vision of where do we want to be in future. That means now we have to prepare ourselves for that. And to prepare for the future, giving priority to STEM as a direction in the education sector, giving it priority, I think is a very clear perspective as far as the government is concerned. And the good thing about that is that government has not just declared it, but it is taking steps towards it. Because we have been informed that over 280-something graduates, scholarships are available for us to have Gambians studied at the level of master's and PhD. I think that is remarkable. For me, I think that is great. If we have over 200 graduates at that level, we are talking about increasing our analytical skills as a country, our ability to go in depth in understanding issues, policies, and guiding strategies towards our development. Apart from that, I have also recorded under the education sector that already it is not enough to go academic alone, but we have to look at the skills the country needs to move forward, to develop. To have the skills in various sectors in our everyday lives, we need all sorts of skills, technical, and that is why the government was very clear in the address to state that the higher institutions like GTTI, which is a technical institution, will be transformed into a university. That means the analysis and the engineering techniques will be deeper in terms of knowledge, and it will prepare our young people Who are the people who are going to the technical institutions like GTTI? These are the young people we are talking about. If our population our young population have skills in various areas as engineers, as mechanics, as plumbers, as electricians, my God, I think that is remarkable as far as I'm concerned. And I think having a leader, having its government, having that direction, I think it's great for the Gambia. In terms of the lower level of education, the statement has also stated that there is increase in enrollment. And if there is increase in enrollment, in fact, from the early childhood development up to the level of upper basic, it has indicated over 60% in all those levels that there is increase for over 60% in all those at all those stages. If our enrollment increased by over 60%, that means that we will need space for those children to be able to have good classrooms, to be able to have a good education environment for education, and have a good and safe environment for education. And that is why it has indicated also that it is working with partners to ensure that we have education as a priority. And if that is the case, we need the structures. And this is why, if maybe the speech did not dilate on those details, but that means that it's recognizing that partners like MRC Holland, they are doing a great job partnering with government to ensure that the extension and the increase in the enrollment of students in schools will also go along with the number of new classrooms, the number of new schools at all levels to cater for those new intakes that we are going to have in the country. So that means that definitely, if you will allow me, I would like to just indicate, for example, for this year alone, 2019, MRC Holland, for example, if you go into the implementation of the policies that the President talked about in the education at the lower MOPSI level, you will realize that they have committed to over 500 classrooms, new classrooms. And these new classrooms are separate from the new schools they are also building, which will be opened by the end of 2019 according to the MRC Holland. Because that means that they have 7 new senior secondary schools in 5 regions of the country. They have 3 new upper basic schools in 2 regions of the country. And they have 10 lower basic schools in 5 regions of the country. So for me, plus rehabilitating over 300 classrooms,
that's huge.
I think that is phenomenal. And I think it's only when we understand the purpose of the address, then we will understand that the President was not there to give you minute details of each and every sector, what it is doing, but to set out the clear policy direction and the programs that it has. And that, I think, the speech has done justice to that.
Thank you very much, Madam Siso. I think you've rightly captured the essence of most of these important sectors, especially some of them that feature prominently in the NDP as a primary and a priority area. At the conclusion of the speech, we saw the President passionately, appeal to Gambians, to reconcile and look forward, come together, in the interest of our country, to move the country forward, to take it to the place that we want to see it. Why is this so significant at this crucial point in time of our nation building?
I think it is important for President Barrow to show leadership in terms of bringing the nation together. He is the leader of the country. He is the person everybody looks up to. Every morning when we wake up, the first thing we think of what is happening in the country, and when you talk about what is happening in the country, you think about who is there and you think about President Barrow. So in that context, it is important for President Barrow to show that every Gambian is under his leadership, and he has a responsibility to all of them, no matter where you belong to. Because his government has committed to a program. And that program requires reconciliation. It requires togetherness. It requires a focus and a direction. And it requires that if we do not have peace and stability in a country, then you cannot concentrate on developing the country you are crying for. We cannot be calling for development, yet the environment for that development to happen will not be there. That will not be possible. And I think he did right to call the nation to come together. Because if you look at it, the reform programs that are going on in this country right now is showing that the government has a direction. Because if you look at the issues in terms of the transitional justice, we have gone far with it. Having the government to even have the commissions on and then share the reports of the Jane Commission, I think is a sign that its willingness to say that we are listening to the government, to the country, to the people of this country. We want to hear and understand what is going on. But how do we do that also within the context of reconciling? How do we do that within the context of having a future where we learn lessons of the past, the wrongs that have happened? How can we correct them without being angry? How can we move forward without being angry, but giving focus to the development and for the generations to come to have a good foundation that they will also be able to build on? And if you look at that, the issues he raised in terms of reconciliation also tells us a lot about the civil service reform. Because if you look at the reform, people talk about issues of we have to deal with people who have been here, yes. But the president's approach is, looking from what he said during this address, let us be together. We are all Gambians. We can learn from our mistakes to correct the wrongs. We can listen to each other so that we understand the perspectives, but we need to have a focus. And this is how I saw his statement. That is how I saw also the way he was calling the country to come and focus on peace and development. And with all the things that needs to be done, I think if we stay together as a country, if we stay together as a people, we can attain a lot within a short period. Because all these things we are talking about, if you look at the National Development Plan, it's all focusing between 2017 and 2021. That means that if we have the constitutional review completed, there must be a referendum. We must go through all these processes. So calling for peace, stability, and understanding, I think is a great thing for him to do as a leader.
In keeping with his development objective of taking Gambia out of global isolation and embracing the world, His Excellency President Adama Barrow in early September 2019 embarked on an official visit to the state of Qatar. The great reception that the President received in Qatar is testimony of the strength of the long-standing relationship between the Gambia and the Gulf state. Zainab, we have seen how Qatar has committed to its relationship with the Gambia, promising to support the Gambia's bid to host the OIC, among a host of issues.
All right, Nfali, like you rightly mentioned, the Gambia and Qatar has a long-standing relationship, and if the president's visit is anything to go by, it is to show how keen and interested both countries are in forging that relationship forward. And if you look at Qatar-Gambia relations also, in the past we have seen Qatar severing ties, but as soon as President Barrow became president, as soon as he assumed the presidency of the Gambia, the Qatari government expressed interest in reopening its mission in Banjul. This goes to show how significant Qatar attaches its relationship to the Gambia. And we have also seen during the visit, the president has been to the Amir, where they had several discussions, and of course the outcome of those discussions culminated into the signing of agreements between the two countries. And among them is communication, where the two governments agreed to operate in each other's territories in the areas of satellite communication. And we have also seen an agreement on mutual administrative assistance, where both parties have agreed to exchange information between the custom authorities of the two countries. Okay, we have also seen an agreement, the legal affairs agreement, which involves capacity building of the judicial systems of both countries. And we have also seen the youth and sports. Qatar has a vibrant youthful population, just like the Gambia, and sports is also one of the activities that young people in Qatar are interested in, like in the Gambia. So signing an agreement in the area of sports is also another significant way of cementing relationships, especially among the young people of the country. Okay, so Qatar Mfali is a country that has a lot of similarities with the Gambia, and of course, the president has expressed that he is inspired by what he has seen in Qatar after he was taken on a conducted tour of the facilities that are being built in preparation for the 2020 football World Cup to be held in Doha. And of course, the Gambia is also scheduled to host the 2022 OIC Summit. So the visit couldn't have come at any better time than now, when both countries are looking forward to hosting two of the most significant events, of the world.
Thank you very much, Zainab. Quite an interesting analysis there. And the president, as he rightly pointed out, said Qatar's ability to host the World Cup successfully will inspire him to successfully host the OIC Summit in the Gambia. Thank you.
Okay, Fali, we have seen how the nation went into grief with the announcement of the demise of the former president, Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara. And we have also seen how the Barrow government has, spearheaded efforts to accord him what he deserves as an elderly statesman. What was the mood like as a young person, the things you've heard about the former president and the things that came out, especially at the state funeral, and generally, what is your impression of the mood of Gambians when Sir Dawda died?
Thank you very much, Zainab. I think the entire country was sad. The whole of Africa was sad, and humanity at large. You don't need to go far. Just take a look at the enormous amount of tribute that poured from across the world, talking about Sir Dawda's legacy and how his demise is a loss to not only the Gambia and Africa, but to the whole of mankind, to the whole of humanity. Sir Dawda was an iconic figure in Gambia's history. Of course, we all know the instrumental role he played in the attainment of independence of the Gambia, and also his championing of peace and unity across Africa and around the world. Sir Dawda, we all know, will be greatly missed because he's somebody who spearheaded and sustained multi-party democracy in Africa. Because of him, Gambia became renowned for being a champion of human rights and democracy in the world. At some point, the Gambia was one of the few countries on the continent that were touted as the longest standing multi-party democracies in Africa. So Sir Dawda's place in our history is something that everyone appreciates, which is why the government decided to give him a befitting state burial by declaring a state of mourning for a period of 7 days, in addition to lowering the national flag at all public institutions at half-mast, which was why the government of the Gambia, under the leadership of President Adama Barrow, decided to give a grand funeral to the man to honor his towering legacy in the history of our country.
Very well said, Fali. Sir Dawda was indeed an icon for not only the Gambia but the whole of Africa and of course the world at large. And President Barrow has really shown great leadership during the time of the nation's grief. He has consoled the whole nation, and the steps he has taken in arranging a state funeral for Sir Dawda Kairaba has been hailed by a lot of people. We sat with him for him to share with us how Sir Dawda has inspired him as a leader and what legacy he is going to leave behind as an inspiration from Sir Dawda Kairaba. Let's take a look at that short interview. Your Excellency, thank you for granting us this interview. We have seen in the past that you've had several interactions with the former President, Sir Dawda Kairaba. Can you share with us how he has inspired you during those moments that you spent with him?
If you ask about President Jawara, I'll be really honored to talk about President Jawara. He generally has been somebody who has been loved by Gambians. And he has been somebody who have done great jobs for the Gambia and the entire world. He took this country, liberated this country from the colonialists. And based on that, on principle, I think he deserves respect. He deserves to be honored. That's why since I came to power, it was really to me, it was part of an obligation to make sure we support him. And that's why I think I visited him about 3 or 4 occasions. But he is somebody who is very, very humble. He is somebody who is very clever, very intelligent man, and somebody who loved his country. And in our interaction, we have always been talking about the rule of law, democracy and good governance, human rights. These are things that he always talked about. I think as an elderly statesman, those were advices that he has been giving me. I think I have learned from him. Because you can buy everything, but you cannot buy experience. So we have learned from his experience. We never wanted him to go. But definitely in life, there must be one point in time, everything has to finish and end. That's the way he ends, but we pray for him. We pray for his soul to rest in perfect peace.
Your Excellency, we have seen that when the former President Sir Dawda Kairaba died, he was accorded or honored with a state funeral. We've seen several days of national mourning for him, and the flags were lowered to half-mast. What was the inspiration behind this?
I think he deserved that. He had been an elderly statesman, a well-respected person who was committed to this country and committed to Africa. So obviously, it was an obligation for us to give him that fitting state funeral. And also the country, it was a big day in the country. It was a very, very sad day for everybody. And I think the whole country was together. We were speaking the same language, and everybody felt what happened on that day. So to give him that fitting burial and lower the flag at half-mast, I think he deserves a bit more than that. So President Jawara is somebody who is really a great man and somebody who is a Pan-Africanist, who has worked very hard for his country. He has worked for government throughout his life, service to the people. I think definitely we will always remember President Jawara. And he also have a very good family. I think his family did a very, very good job in supporting him up to that level. So we are there to give them that kind of moral support. And we thank every Gambian, whether the opposition or government, that we are all together as a family. I think that's what we need in this country. It was a unifying moment for the Gambia.
And Your Excellency, if there are 2 things that you've learned from Sir Dawda Kairaba and you would want them to be your legacy, what would these be?
He's a very humble man. I think that is very important to learn from him, being humble. I think humbleness is very, very important. And he's somebody who loved his country. He was a Pan-Africanist. He loved what he was. So I think that was something that I will always remember as far as Sir Dawda is concerned.
Thank you so very much, Your Excellency.
It's a pleasure.
Recently, His Excellency President Adama Barrow had a meeting with traditional chiefs from the Republic of Guinea-Bissau. They were in the country to foster people-to-people ties between the Gambia and the Republic of Guinea-Bissau. The Bissau-Guinean chiefs discussed with His Excellency President Adama Barrow the significance of peace in both countries and most importantly in the region. They said without peace, no meaningful development can take place. And the chief also advised Gambians in particular to cherish and safeguard, even with their lives, the stability and peace that is in the country. They said they are speaking from experience, being a country that underwent a very terrifying, terrible civil war and political violence. Let's look at this story for more. The visiting chiefs from Guinea-Bissau were accompanied by their Gambian counterparts, the Gambian chiefs, traditional chiefs from the Gambia, and of course the ambassador and officials of the Gambian embassy in Guinea-Bissau. I think the other dimension to this visit, Zainab, is the significance or the importance that President Barrow attaches to the institution of chieftaincy in the country. Can you dilate more on this, Zainab?
Indeed, Mfali, President Barrow has attached so much importance to chieftaincy in the Gambia. We have seen in the past how the chiefs were lowered to only political streets. But since assuming power, President Barrow has brought the chiefs closer to the people and has seen them as valuable development partners, especially when it comes to administration at the local level. So this is indeed a remarkable collaboration between the chiefs in the Gambia and those from Guinea-Bissau in maintaining peace and order in the Gambia.
To wrap up this edition of the President's Diary, we leave you with an interview we had with the chairperson of Coalition 2016, Her Excellency Fatmata Jallow Tambajang, following an audience with the President at the State House in Banjul. President Barrow and the coalition stakeholders agreed to continue to work together until 2021 in order to fully implement the National Development Plan, which is the development blueprint of the coalition government.
This is Coalition 2016, comprising initially of 8 political parties, 2 National Independence Assembly members, and 2 civil society representatives. We are here today as a landmark. It's historic. We've come back to see how best we will strengthen our body, our institution, to support our government. This is a coalition government, and the coalition is the advisory body, politically, economic, and policy that would help or support the system of governance so that the agenda we had before as an agenda, as a coalition, will continue. But fundamentally, the main purpose is to, we've already spoken, discussed. For the past 2 years, we've been interacting with all stakeholders, many Gambians here and abroad. And we've been also listening very carefully about how people are feeling in terms of how government is going, how the system is going, and where they want our country to go. Because the change was everybody's responsibility. And many stood for the change. And we stood up not only to change the system, but also to look at the processes. Not only regime change, but also to look at how to change the system of governance so that we continue to build our foundation, a foundation of democracy, respect for the rule of law, human rights, gender equality, the environment, and you name it. So we have realized that the agenda, which is for government, is National Development Plan, but the agenda was adopted by Coalition 2016. And of course, it comprises the reform, constitutional reform, economic reform, truth and reconciliation, land commission, and also other areas, judiciary reform. Because we inherited 22 years of poor governance, bad governance, a broken economy. When I was in government, we inherited just one month income cover, but eventually we had to run. And also the country was not that stable at different levels. We had to help and stabilize not only the economy, but also to stabilize society, to bring people together for us to have national cohesion. Now, the reform agenda that was adopted by the coalition, which has the legitimacy to ensure that the reform agenda is completed successfully so that we can have a level playing field, is yet to be completed. So we have discussed it extensively with our flag bearer, and on the basis of the incompletion of the reform agenda, we have decided as a coalition to extend his social legitimacy from 3 years to 5 years. So that's why I say today is historic. This is something that the whole world should hear. He did not ask for it. And we are standing for the country. We continue to stand for the country. We continue to champion the cause of the country. Hence, as a body, we thought it's prudent that we should come, because now it's democracy. In the past 22 years, he can just say whether, well, I'm constitutionally elected and there's nothing nobody can do. But he has shown interest, respect, and recognition, and the love of the coalition, and acknowledge the contributions that the coalition did to the extent that he has listened to us. So the change, the extension of his mandate is coming from the coalition. The social mandate, the legitimacy is coming from the coalition. He has the legal backing. He also has the social legitimacy. Now, it's important to clarify. People are saying, oh, the memorandum of understanding is not signed. A memorandum of understanding cannot bring a head of state to be a head of state. It was an agreement and a manifesto that for many months, we sat, we thought about it, and we articulated it. It was unanimously approved, and those are the documents that we took to the IEC for them to recognize our flag bearer as a presidential candidate. So the agreement is what we are now legally going to amend in line with the decision we have taken today. The memorandum of understanding is important, but the fundamentals are the agreement which was signed by all parties. And the agreement with the manifesto is the reform agenda. So if the reform agenda is incomplete, and considering what we found in government, we did not find money in the treasury. The economy was bankrupt. In the initial 1.5 years, we had to run and look for money. Now, all the reforms that are going on are not supported by government in terms of money. The human capital is there, but it is the international community, the security reform, for instance, it's the international community that is funding it. We cannot leave that halfway and say, oh yes, we have to have elections, we have to find another president. We don't, it is not rational, it is not logical. That's why we thought today we will come. It has taken us so many years, 2 years I would say, talking, agreeing to disagree. Of course, we are taking into consideration the views and opinions of the Gambians, because the coalition is just a body, but Gambia is beyond just a coalition. So we have heard the voices of every people. What I would like to call on Gambians today is that we have agreed with our flag bearer, who is now the excellency of this country, that we have a program. A body is supposed to have a program that would direct its affairs. One, we are going to establish a secretariat. We have to have a point of reference because this is historic. Two, we are going to have a national dialogue where everybody, interfaith, Christians, Muslim, everybody in the Gambia, young people, we recognize the importance of young people. Our nation is a young population. So all the young people, there have been an emergence of groups, associations, pro-Gambia, many, many others. So we want everybody, I'm calling on everybody, to come on board and support the coalition government to continue to complete, implement the agenda, the reform agenda, so that at the end of the day, come 2021, we would have said, this is what we are asked to do. We tasked ourselves to do it. We took the responsibility of telling the nation that this is what we are going to do, and we have done it. So I want everybody to come and support the process, the reform process. It is the reform process that we are supporting. Security sector reform, you cannot live halfway. We know the type of security we inherited. Economic reforms, now we are going. If you look at the ports today, you have a lot of steamliners waiting to dock, which shows that there is business. You go, the tourism sector is moving. The agricultural sector and other sectors are also moving. And we have been very open with our flag bearer. We have discussed with him what works, what hasn't worked, and how we feel it should work in an inclusive manner within the framework of the Gambia that we have we chose 2016. He has agreed with us. He is very happy to see us, and he has renewed his commitment to the coalition, and we shall be continuing to work very closely with him so that we will implement our reform agenda. So one point of clarification for the social media. We have not decided to extend His Excellency's mandate because he asked for it. We are not extending it because the coalition so feels it. We are extending it from the point of principle that we had made commitments and obligations, campaign, that this is what we are going to deliver to the Gambian people. And we feel that those processes, particularly the electoral reform and the constitutional reform, without constitutional reform, we are going to uphold the 1997 constitution, which was made by one person. Without electoral reform, there is no transparency, there is no level playing field. You know, without the Truth and Reconciliation, look at what is coming out, the revelations in the Truth and Reconciliations. These are things that we need to look at. Let's forget about ourselves and look at Gambia. How can we move Gambia in a more stable, peaceful, and harmonized country so that everybody is together, everybody listens, everybody supports. And we also have decided as a coalition that we will have a system of communication. Our communication has been weak simply because we don't have expertise among ourselves to have a professional communication strategy, but we have hired a consultant. And the other issue is that most of us are busy. It's difficult to really focus on that. But now we have a consultant who is going to develop a good strategic communication so that people will know what is happening in the coalition, the work that we are doing, the support we are giving to our government, and the support that we need also for the rest of Gambians to give us. We are not forgetting the diaspora. Everybody contributed. The change was brought by a majority of people. And the change is something that we need to cherish. We want to be, I am calling on Gambians, particularly young people, we are building a foundation for the young people. Once you have democracy, you have rule of law, you have respect for human rights, that's transparency and accountability. At the end of the day, when you leave, you have left a level playing field for other people to take over. So I thank everybody. I thank the Gambian population In the diaspora, the media, I want to talk to the media, and particularly social media. Let us try to see how we contribute to rebuilding our country, not how to break our country. Building it means educating the masses, telling them what works, what doesn't work. If you realize something doesn't, no system is perfect. If you realize something is not working, write professionally, write, it's a transparent government. Write to anybody, Office of the President, Secretary General, write to everybody, express your ideas and give concrete recommendations that can contribute towards the movement of Gambia to a better nation. So we are banking on the media fraternity to help us carry our message, the positive message, in the interest of the Gambia and not in the interest of anybody, because Gambia is bigger than all of us. I thank you so much for the role that you have played, the media, social media, diaspora people everywhere, what they have played during the transition, not the transition, during the change process. I want them to continue that way. Of course, we cannot say that everybody is going to be the same, is going to think the same. If we think the same, then there is no democracy. You must have divergent views, but we must create space and understand that peaceful coexistence means giving your view, me giving my view, and you giving your view, and those views be sieved, and then the best of it we take for our country. So thank you so much.
Well, viewers, that does it for this exciting episode of the President's Diary. But before we wrap up, we would like to thank all our followers from across the world for their feedback, for the suggestions and the recommendations about how to improve this program. They are most welcome. They keep us strong and they keep us going, and we'll continue to innovate to make this program more interesting for our viewers. That does it. Join us next time. But until then, my name is Mfali Fadel and my co-presenter here is Zainab Fall.
So viewers, you are reminded that this is the President's Diary with happenings around the presidency. Join the President's Diary every month for an in-depth information on the activities that take place at the Office of the President on a monthly basis. Until then, it's a bye from me.